Hello guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Thank you for tuning into the channel. On today's episode, we're going to be crafting some miniature ruins for your D&D game, Frostgrave, Warhammer, any sort of tabletop game you'd like, or just for a diorama. Maybe you just want to make these for a hobby. I'm using the European XPS foam that was provided to me by the Army Painter in their Game Master kit that they sent to me. It is the Dungeons Caverns core set. I'm also using their paints and their tools for this craft. So I started off with a scrap piece of the European XPS foam and drew lines about a ½ inch across. These don't have to be perfect because we are making something that is going to have suffered from entropy. So the next thing I did is I went in and drew these simple ruin effects. Now I don't know anything about what I drew. I just know I did not summon any demons. Chances are there's probably a little bit of Chinese tossed in there because, yes, I had to go to summer school and learn Chinese. I had that type of parent. So anyway, here we go. Just take your straight edge razor and carve out your ruins to your desired effect. And here's what everything looked like so far. You can see the little cuts developing in my piece. Now we also need to bevel the edges, which we'll do that later, to create more of a weathered effect on our stone. Here's a finished piece next to where we are right now. So now that we are finished carving in our ruins, we need to make these a little fancier. And so for this, I'm going to use a toothpick, or you could also use or a mechanical pencil. And what I'm going to do now is just poke through where I have cut with my straight edge razor to widen the gap on the ruins and give us the desired finalized effect. But here is the toothpick method. You could also use a barbecue skewer, something a little bigger. Personally, I prefer a combination of the toothpick and the mechanical pencil because the mechanical pencil is more rounded and the toothpick is more sharp. So when I mess up and make mistakes, I think it just adds to the effect. It also wears down these etchings into the rock, the look of the etchings into the rock, which is what would happen over time if these were ancient tablets. All right, now it's back to the straight edge razor, and we are going to just bevel off some of these edges so we can get a nice stone effect. I'm also going to chip out chunks on the bottom, and I'm going to chip out some chunks on the top to get a really nice weathered effect. I want these to look as if maybe they were giant stones at one point that held some sort of magic, but over the course of time they've been cut down or fallen or something along those lines. One thing I really enjoy about the European style XPS foam is that it's very malleable and soft, which allows me to make all sorts of indentations with my fingers, almost as if I'm sculpting the XPS foam. The XPS foam that I find in the USA has a much harder texture to it than the XPS foam that I got from Europe. Next up, I decided to prime the XPS foam pieces with this aerosol spray-on primer that is water-based. It's really cool. I got this in the kit from Army Painter, and I'm really pleased with the results. Priming is a piece of cake, and it does not melt your foam. I'll go ahead and post a tag up top if you want to check out my video about this product. Also, I decided to follow Army Painter's suggested stone effect paint recipe, which included their dungeon base, dungeon highlights, dungeon effects, and a subterrain wash. So first off, I needed to overbrush the primed terrain piece once it had dried. An overbrush is kind of like a dry brush, a little more paint than a dry brush and a little less paint than a standard standard amount of paint if you're trying to get an even coat. I want little bits of this black primer to show through because that's the layered effect that I'm going for. So I don't really want everything to be covered up perfectly by the base coat. That's hence the overbrush. Next, I went in with the dungeon highlights. For this, I just tapped on a little bit. I used the same brush and didn't put a whole lot of product on there. I kind of wanted to do more of a dry brush effect because I want a little bit of the black to show through. I want a little bit of the first color that we used as a base coat to show through. This is just to lighten things up. And in order to create depths on some of the pieces, I did focus a little bit more on the center of some of the slabs of stone in quotes. So do this for a little while until you like the effect. Now remember, the idea is not to cover everything up with the next color, just to highlight little bits. Okay? For the folks that are new to painting, I'm going to show all of my technique. I'm not going to fast forward anything. I'm not going to speed anything up. I'm just going to show you in real time how I painted these so you can get an idea of what I'm doing. If you look on this one, you can see in the center where I decided to make it a little more white. I think that just adds a little bit of depth to the piece. So enjoy. Maybe I'll put some music on or who knows what. And if you want to see the next step, then check the timestamps out and you can fast forward to the next step. The next color I went in with is a white, which is a dungeon effects color. And for this, I once again used the same brush and I did a traditional dry brush where I used very little paint, wiped a lot of the paint off, and then just use a fast motion to tap the edges and get the lightning effect of this paint color. They call this paint color Dungeon Effects, I think, but it's pretty much just a white. It's a beautiful white. All of their paints are gorgeous colors. I recommend the Army Painter. I use their products all the time. Even before they sent me something, I've been using their products. This final step and this final layer of paint is really where the pieces start to pop and we get that traditional wargame stone effect look. That painted stone chipped beautifulness. We've got a couple more steps to go, so hang tight. These next two steps are not really necessary, but I like doing them because I think it's what the recipe recommended. So we're going to add a wash after this. We're going to add the Subterrain wash per the recipe from their booklet. And then after we do the wash, we're going to tap on a little more of this Dungeon Effects white highlight because sometimes the wash creeps on top of our highlights and it creates a neat look, but I want them to pop a little more. So we've got 2 more steps and then these puppies are finished. Once that wash has dried, grab your brush, dab on some more of that white Dungeon Effects paint, and dry brush once again. This will just really make your pieces pop. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this. That's all I have to offer for this tutorial. Please hit the like and subscribe button and all that stuff and notifications and doobly-doos and whatever and whatnots. And have a good one. Stay safe out there and take it easy, Greasy.